Thank you, Kelburn, and thanks to everybody who is here today for this Bill of Rights rally. I want to share with you just a quick story coming from my military experience. I'm a former Army officer, and I was in a battalion-size element in Brainerd, Minnesota. And this was during the war in Afghanistan. And there were hundreds of soldiers there. Our battalion colonel was out front. We were getting ready to retire the colors that day. And out on the street were a bunch of protesters. And they were protesting the war in Afghanistan. And their signs were reading, "Soldiers, go home." And our colonel went down to the street to have a conversation with these people, and he asked, "Who's the organizer of this event?" And of course, nobody wanted to stand up and identify themselves as being responsible, because there's 200 soldiers standing back here. And they anticipated that this would be a confrontation they couldn't win. However, they were wrong, because the colonel went down to the street and he finally said, "I would like to shake the hand and congratulate the individual who put together this protest." So finally, a guy courageously walks to the front when he realizes there's no consequences and says, "That's me." The colonel shakes his hand and says, "We're going to be here for the rest of the weekend. I hope you'll gather out here on the street and continue to protest, because if we were in Afghanistan, I would have to order my soldiers to have you shot. The fact that we're in the United States of America, you're free here to protest, and these good men and women that are standing behind me here, they're here to protect your right to free speech here in this country. Thank God we're in America." So I want to buy a little show of hands. How many families here have a recent graduate or somebody just graduated from high school? So we got several people here. We think about young children growing up in a household and those who are now facing graduation. And there was a great deal of excitement when graduation day came around, because we get to leave home and go do whatever we want to do with our lives. No mom and dad get to tell us when we got to be home, or what we're going to eat, or where we got to be, or if we got to shut up and go to bed because it's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. Nobody's telling us what to do anymore. We graduated, we're free, right? But that whole element of freedom is also something that elicits a lot of fear, and the reason being is with freedom comes responsibility. So we walked away from that home where everything for us was paid for, taken care of. Somebody was essentially paying for everything we ever needed. But we had to abide by their rules as long as that existed, correct? For those of you that follow the news, you might remember the name of a gentleman by the name of Michael Rotundo. He was in the news even well before May, but on May 22nd, 2018, a ruling came down from the court that permitted his parents to kick him out of the house. And the title of the article, this was by the New York Times, said, "30-year-old deadbeat son." I want you to remember that. 30-year-old deadbeat son gets kicked out of the house. And the parents, on a letter written to their son on February 2nd, wrote, "Michael, after a discussion with your mother, we have decided that you must leave this house immediately." What were mom and dad saying to their 30-year-old son? "We're giving you the opportunity to exercise your right to freedom, whether you want it or not." Today is kind of an interesting day in discussion around the Bill of Rights, and the reason why I focus on the issue of freedom is that with freedom comes the word responsibility. And before I share some thoughts on that specifically, I want to just share something really unique about this. I don't think Kelburn Coons was intending for this, but I'm this person who loves to look at dates and previous dates, and if there's interesting little things that happen along the way, it's always kind of cool. Well, the Bill of Rights was ratified December 15th, 1791. We're standing here today on July 7th, 2018. Remember the numbers, 226622. 226 years, 6 months, 22 days. We're standing here after the Bill of Rights was ratified. It's kind of cool, isn't it? All right, so short little conversation about freedom. Freedom is the power or right to act, to speak, or think whatever one wants, or do whatever we want to do. Knowing that we have this great potential, we naturally aspire to freedom, but freedom is an amazing thing, and with most amazing things will come some things that you're not prepared to handle. And in the case of Michael Rotundo, he wasn't prepared to handle all the responsibilities that came with exercising his freedom. If you have freedom to think, if I have freedom to think, it is my responsibility to think positively if I'm to have a good outlook and a good productive life. If I have the freedom to speak, it's my responsibility to think before I speak and then speak in a meaningful way. If I have the freedom to act, it's my responsibility to act with dignity, being respectful and considerate of others. Nobody else gets to make that decision for me. It is mine and mine alone. Many people deeply fear freedom, just like Michael Rotundo did. And although they talk about freedom, very few of them want real freedom because they're subconsciously aware that freedom will bring many problems and they're not ready to face them, like a house payment or utilities, etc. It was better for Michael Rotundo to live under his parents' rule and in his self-imposed cozy form of imprisonment than it was to go out and seek freedom. So if you wonder why people fear freedom these days, it's because with it comes responsibility. But what if the case is that you do have freedom like we have here in this country and you haven't fulfilled those responsibilities? Well, failure accumulates rapidly. Sadness hangs around you like a cloud. But at any time, you get to shed this self-imposed imprisonment and take responsibility for yourself. So freedom means you have the responsibility for every act, for every breath. Whatever you do or don't do, you'll be responsible for. Freedom is inseparable from responsibility. So finally, I want to conclude with this. Show me somebody who doesn't value freedom or doesn't think freedom is important. And I'll show you somebody who does not accept responsibility for who they are and what they've become. Thank you.
Free thought for free people.